Note, break in. We'll take you with anyone at any time in the next hour. I'm going to bring in my panel now. Joining us today, politics editor for The Root, Jason Johnson, Republican strategist and MSNBC contributor, Steve Schmidt, former House Intel Committee staffer and special assistant to President George W. Bush, Michael Allen, and with us from Washington, Mika Oyeng, vice president for Third Way's National Security Program and a former staffer in the House Intel Committee. Steve, I want to start with you. And ask you how potentially dramatic Jim Comey's testimony could be in light of what he reveals about what was obviously a sense that these interactions were going to come under scrutiny. For him to walk out of his first meeting with President-elect Trump at Trump Tower in December and start taking notes in his car is a pretty extraordinary new detail.
It is. He was obviously deeply troubled, and I think what's setting up tomorrow is the most consequential congressional testimony maybe in a generation. You have Washington, D.C. bars are opening up early for happy hour tomorrow. It's going to be an extraordinary event. And I do think how unusual it is, and yes, it is unethical. We're a nation of laws. The only oath that the FBI director takes is to the Constitution of the United States. We don't grant or make personal statements of loyalty to the President of the United States. You serve at the pleasure of the President of the United States.
Let me add, I mean, we all served in the White House, and the oath that you take is to the country, and you promise to be loyal to the country. There's no oath that any of us took to the presidents we served. So what is it about? Is he missing a chip? Is it the ignorance defense again? You said you were willing to go work in this White House. Would you need to know the answer to whether or not the defense to everything he's accused of doing wrong is that he doesn't know the answer, or is it that he's willing to sort of blow up decades of traditions in terms of the independence of the FBI? What would make you more comfortable if you were going to go into this White House?
Look, I think ultimately what is going to have to make us and the media and everyone else more comfortable is what was in his heart when he said these things.
Whose heart?
In the president's. Why
does that matter? If he broke a law,
it matters.
Is it legal to ask the FBI director to back off an investigation into Mike Flynn once he's been...
It matters because ultimately it's in the eye of the beholder. If we're headed towards impeachment where we have high crimes and misdemeanors, Mueller is not going to, he can't indict the President of the United States. That's impermissible under the Constitution. What he would do is write a report to Congress, and you're going to see this in the eyes of the beholder. You either see a man innocently unaware of the norms of Washington, desperately trying to save his presidency, or you see a more nefarious character who is dangling the job over his head, who's clearly cornering the FBI director at every moment. Ultimately, I think it's going to be a political decision, and it's going to matter what else President Trump said to other witnesses, which ultimately implicates this thick executive privilege debate.
Mika, let me bring you into this and ask you if it matters in a legal context or a legal national security context. What was in the president's heart when he asked for a loyalty oath from Jim Comey, his then FBI director?
So I think it's important to distinguish between what you would have in a criminal context for obstruction of justice and what we mean when we talk about high crimes and misdemeanors. What we're talking about there is abuse of power, and so the standards are not exactly the same. The intent requirement there, it's not necessarily that the president was intending to obstruct, but did it have the effect of that? And one of the things you have to look at was after Comey told the president, there are proper channels for how you can communicate with me, the president still called him twice to put the pressure on him to drop the investigation. That's not a guy who's just innocently walking around saying, oh, I didn't know and I'm just trying to save my administration. At that point, he knew.
All right, Jason, I'm pulling my full Carrie Mathison. There's a method to my cards here. You can't see them at home, but believe me, it's a mess. But I want to read something else from the Comey testimony. Comey writes, the president began by asking me whether I wanted to stay on as FBI director, which I found strange because he had already told me twice in earlier conversations that he hoped I would stay. And I had assured him that I intended to stay. He said that lots of other people wanted my job, and given the abuse I had taken during the previous year, he would understand if I wanted to walk away. This does not sound like a president. This sounds like it was a trade-off. If you're loyal to me, you can keep the job you want.
Nicole, this reads like testimony for like a harassment suit to HR. Like, it really does. I'm uncomfortable. I don't like being in the room with this person. My job was dangled in front of them. I basically left the room breathless and had to write all over. If for no other reason than it sort of sets the environment that President Trump has established with people who are supposed to be independent, I think that's damaging enough. But what I think it also speaks to is some of the testimony we heard today, because we kept hearing people say, well, I didn't feel this, I didn't feel that, but they wouldn't say whether Trump asked them. Well, now we've got someone saying, look, not only did I feel intimidated, not only did I feel pressured, but he also asked me the question.
Ken Delaney, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Do feelings matter in an investigation into whether or not someone obstructed justice? No one cares about my feelings, but I'm wondering if people care about the feelings of the people running the nation's top spy agencies or top law enforcement agencies.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I believe to prove a criminal case of obstruction of justice, you have to prove that it was done corruptly with an intent to obstruct. Not just, suggesting to someone, but, in the presidential context, actually ordering. And so whether they felt pressured or not, I think is significant from a legal perspective. But as Mika said, it's not significant from a political perspective, from an abuse of power perspective.
Michael Schmidt, let me ask you, do we need to get to the bottom of whether or not do we need to understand the motives for wanting the Flynn piece excused before we understand whether the president had any intent? And I guess what I'm saying is, do we need to know what the president knew Michael Flynn had done? It seems there's also a part in this testimony where Trump seems to ask Comey, if you find out if any of my satellite associates were involved in Russia, call me. Let me know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it looks like Trump was almost asking Comey to share investigation about an ongoing criminal investigation into his campaign team's alleged or potential contacts with Russia. Do we need to find out what Trump knew and when he knew it to understand this question of intent to cover up a crime or commit a crime?
Well, certainly Democrats will want answers to that. Democrats will want this to be dug into as much as possible. And critics of Trump would say, this is a man who is, very independent and does not really go to bat for other people. So why is it that he was trying so hard to bend over backwards for Flynn? That's what the critics would wonder, is that why was he pushing Comey repeatedly on that? What is it that Flynn knows, and what were Trump's interactions with Flynn about, and did Trump tell him to talk to the Russian officials?
All right, we're going to take a very short break, but when we come back, Stone